peaking your body to be healthy and in its best shape is so hard at the best of times. And for me, who's someone that it feels like I'm constantly injured, I'd finally kind of strung together over a year of health. And I felt like that year was my year. And when they said one more year wait, I kind of thought, how am I going to not get injured in another year's time?
Hello and welcome to the Bodies Built Better podcast. I am your host, Jackie Tan, and it is so good to have you here today. This podcast is all about human performance, whether that's sports performance or showing up at your best every single day. I chat with athletes, coaches, health experts, and ordinary people doing extraordinary things. We explore the body's incredible ability to heal, adapt, and evolve so you can crush limitations, reconnect your body and mind, and discover your extraordinary potential. And today on the show, I chat with one of Australia's most accomplished middle distance women of all time, a 3-time Olympic finalist and Australian record holder, Genevieve Gregson. The last time you saw Genevieve, she suffered a ruptured Achilles in the Tokyo Olympics Steeplechase final. But if you think that's the end of her career, you would be wrong. Genevieve is no stranger to injury and the rehab process, and has certainly proven that she has the strength and will to do everything to come back fitter, stronger, and even more determined. But her current journey is one she's experiencing for the first time. 35 weeks pregnant at the time of recording, she shares the excitement of becoming a mother, what that means as an elite athlete, and all the considerations that come with starting a family, juggling training, sponsorship contracts, and life. Jen shares what life was like growing up, the pivotal moments she has had her parents to thank for, and what she hopes to adopt when she becomes a mother. We also talk about coping with injury and setbacks, dive into exactly what happened leading up to the Tokyo Olympics final, and of course, her comeback campaign for the Paris Olympics. She's an incredible athlete and even more incredible woman. This conversation is sure to inspire you. Enjoy this episode with Genevieve Gregson. Genevieve, thank you so much for chatting with me today. Welcome to the Bodies Built Better podcast.
Well, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for fitting me in.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm excited. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but you are described as one of Australia's most accomplished middle distance women of all time, and you have an Australian record, and you're a 3-time Olympic finalist. When hear that, like looking back over your career, all the highs and lows, how do you feel when you hear that?
I mean, it's very flattering, obviously, because you make it sound like you make it sound like I've done more than I feel like I have done.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's just more the mentality that athletes have. We're always feeling like we need to achieve more than we have. Goals are continuously met and then reset. But I am very proud of myself. I do believe I've done a lot in my career, but like I said, there's still so much more I want to do. So hopefully I can keep adding to that list of credentials and not hang up the shoes yet.
Oh, I'm sure you will. And what I find interesting is I've listened to a few of your interviews now, and your mentality obviously is such a healthy one. And you are currently pregnant with your first child. And I'm so interested to hear about your upbringing, because I feel like when I hear it, it's like completely foreign. And I'm sure people can relate with that. But I find it so interesting and how your parents have played a huge part in your career. Can you tell us about your upbringing?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I obviously didn't think that it was strange at the time, probably till I got a little bit older. But I just had a big family. I have 3 brothers and we're all a year apart. So I think from the get-go, we were always going to be a very active and wild bunch of kids. We lived on a farm. We lived on 120 acres just inland from the Gold Coast. So again, just in that type of culture of always playing outside, running around. We had each other to entertain ourselves. And my dad is, just a sports fanatic. He, loved from the day we could walk, having us at the pool, whether it was him swimming and us all in like a little pig pen on the side of the pool, just like sitting there crawling around, right up until, taking us to little A's. And we were just always in sport. I don't remember it ever being another way. And I think that ingrained it in us, whether we were competitive or not. I do have, I'd say, 2 brothers out of the 3 that aren't super competitive. And then the other 2, me and my one of my brothers, we are just a competitive, wired sort of athlete where, everything turns into a competition. But I think where it was strange with us, and people listening to this podcast might be like, oh my gosh, you guys are weird, is my dad, he's a pharmacist, and, he always has been for as long as I can remember. And health was very important. So I did grow up eating very healthy and eating a lot of red meat. We lived on a Wagyu farm. We had every vitamin under the sun that is required for a healthy diet. We had wheatgrass, we had beetroot juice, celery juice, carrot juice, ginger mixed in with all of it. Anything that my dad read about and thought that was really healthy and good for your immune system, we were doing. So having your friends over and see you have wheatgrass in the morning is pretty embarrassing. And we hated it. This wasn't something we did willingly, but my dad just, it really encouraged a healthy diet to give us every chance to be good at whatever we wanted to do, because we were all passionate about sport. And I think that's going to be something that's hard for me to take with a child on the way. Like, do I take it to that extreme and feed my baby like crazy juices? Because you had mentioned Ryan was brought up very different to me. My husband, he had more relaxed upbringing where if you were driven, it was all intrinsic and you decided what sort of diet you wanted as an athlete. He essentially is self-made. He had a mum that was very driven to make sure that he had all the opportunities he needed to become an athlete, but it all came from him wanting to eat healthy and do the right training and turn up to the right races. So he has the mentality that, fill the fridge with chocolate and lollies and chips, and if they want them, they can have them. If not, that's good. It's teaches them self-discipline. But I'm coming from no sugar diet, healthy, drink juices. So that's something we'll have to compromise with. But we both turned out to be very good athletes, and it just shows there are so many methods of parenting, and there's no one strict way that is the answer.
Yeah, that's it. And I've listened to a lot of your interviews, and you've said that Ryan has said that he thinks you've been given more energy for some reason. Could you relate that back to your upbringing and all of that, good, healthy, nutritious food and juice that
definitely. Another thing Ryan says about me, other than the fact that he thinks I have like superpower, is how much energy I have in a day. But he says like my immune system, my whole life while he's known me, I don't get sick. Before COVID came around, I have had COVID, but before COVID had come around, we couldn't pick a time where we remember me having a cold or a flu or a headache even. I don't get sick, and that is something that I'm proud of, I guess. But it just shows I do have a strong immune system, and that can be genetic as well. It's not necessarily just because I ate really healthy growing up. I think growing up on a farm, there is a lot of research out there that a lot of Australia's really good athletes grew up in country Australia. So sometimes that can come into play, but again, I think there's so many variables to know if that's the answer. But Ryan, he thinks that I'm an alien because, I think I just sleep well. I get, really rested in the night. So when I wake up, I have so much energy to burn. But I'm probably really annoying when, he wants to have a midday nap and I'm like, no, we need to go have a cafe, go to the cafe or cook in the house or do something to, burn more energy. So again, hopefully that comes as a, you know, asset when I have a child, because there won't be any of that extra energy, I don't think, to burn. I think I'll be burning it throughout the night. But
Yeah.
yeah, we're definitely polar opposites in a lot of different areas.
We'll have to know, how did you go with COVID?
Yeah, I didn't think I had it because again, it was so mild. I was fully training. It was back in early January. Again, I was running every day. I was coming off my Achilles surgery. I was pregnant. And yeah, felt great until I kind of, for a few days, had a bit of asthma. I normally get asthma when I get a virus. As a kid, I always had that. They kind of were always paired together. And that was the only thing I really noticed. For about 3 or 4 days, I remember saying to Ryan, oh, it's so strange. Every time I go for a run, like I find it harder to breathe. I definitely have asthma, and I didn't want to take Ventolin because I was pregnant. So I just kind of, you know, took it easy for a few days. But it wasn't until a RAT test showed that I was positive, and I called my doctor, like my sports doctor, and he goes, yeah, that sounds like COVID if you had asthma strangely for a few days, because it is a respiratory virus. So I, you know, other than that, I was fine. I felt just run down for 3 or 4 days, but you know, I seemed to, you know, get rid of it pretty well, and
bounce
really
back.
side effects since. So hopefully that I don't get it
Good.
again.
Yeah. When you do look back on everything that your parents did, can you pick parts where you go, "Oh, actually, that was a really good thing they did. I really want to do that, you know, for my child."
Yeah, oh, so much. My parents were, I would say they were strict. I was scared of them, but not
Yeah.
not in a bad way, you know, they're not belting me and,
Totally.
you know,
Yeah.
being terrible people. They
Yeah,
just,
I can relate. I was the same with my dad.
yeah, they were just so disciplined, and you had to earn everything. Like my mum, you know, had it in her head that we had to all play the piano, which meant half an hour practice morning, half an hour practice at night. And there was 4 kids. So that meant our day started about 5 a.m. with slots of 30 minutes, you know, just rotating us through before school. And you couldn't go to a friend's house unless you'd got your practice out of the way, or if they had a piano, you had to be doing it at their house. Like we did have crazy routine and schedule that in this day and age, I look back and think like, wow, that was back in the day where things were strict. But, you know, even just going to the movies, like it wasn't as simple as me being like, oh, mum, I want to go to the movies with my friends. You know, she would say, well, have you cleaned your room? Is the house in good order and stuff like that? So my parents were strict, but in a way that I think taught us a lot. You know, we were never given anything for free. We had to work for everything we wanted. And where I think I would like to take a leaf out of their book was with sport. They gave, you know, when we were really young, they gave us every opportunity to be good. I think when you're really young, you don't always know what's best for you. And they just made sure that they could take us to everything we needed to go. They could, you know, pay for a uniform if I made the state team. They were pushy at times when they thought we probably were just being lazy and would have preferred to go to a party or, you know, a holiday than go training. And I think the biggest thing that my parents did that actually made my career what it was I was offered a scholarship to America to study and essentially be a professional athlete. You know, you get a degree and you race all at the same time, which is really hard for 18-year-olds. But I was given an amazing opportunity in Florida. I didn't want to go. I said to them, I'm not going. I told the people offering me the scholarship no. Like I passed off all the offers and applied to university in Queensland. And my parents just wouldn't have a bar of it. They're like, we're not letting you miss this. We know you love running. We know you're talented. You can get a free degree. Like all your brothers are paying for university. And so they said for the first year, you have to try it. So they sent me over there. They came over with me and set me up because they knew I was so anxious about leaving home. And they just kind of sternly put me in my place and said, try it for a year. You're only 18. If you hate it in a year's time and you can confidently look us in the eye and say, this is not for you, you can come home and do whatever you want to do, but we're not letting you pass this without trying. And I mean, I ended up loving it. It did take me a long time, but I ended up loving it, having a great college experience, getting a free degree. And at the end of those 4 years of college, I qualified for my first Olympic Games. And I mean, the rest is history. And it's just scary to think in that sliding door moment, if my parents had have, felt bad that I was so upset. Because when I say I didn't want to go, like, I didn't want to go. I ran away from home one day. I was like, you can't make me, like, you can't put me on that plane. Like, I was adamant that that wasn't for me. And even when they dropped me off in America, I cried for weeks straight. I was like Skyping them every day, telling them I hated it and that I needed to come home. And mum at times was heartbroken. She said so many times, asked my dad, like, are you sure we should be doing this? Is this the right thing? Like, she's devastated. But they persisted. And I just think, like, that is such an amazing, like, to know when is too much and when you do need to push them. I think that's something that is really hard for a parent, and I don't know if I'll be as good as it as them. I'm probably a bit more of a softie, like, because I'm just comparing how I am with like animals.
Yeah.
But yeah, parenting is hard, and if there's anything I've learned, there is a lot of trial and error, but you also got to trust your instincts. If you think there's an opportunity for your child and it's worth pushing them a little bit, I believe that you should be a bit of a pushy parent.
Yeah, I mean, especially if they see and know how talented you
Yeah.
are and what you are made of. When you were offered that, like, what was the driving no behind it? Were you scared of leaving home? Was that it, or did you fall out of love with running? Like, what was the
I
fear?
think it ended up being a series of things, but it all stemmed from me being scared of leaving home. Being from such a close-knit family of three brothers, we had a lovely home life. Mum had dinner on the table every night. We, did family holidays. We were close with our grandparents. Like, I just came from a bubble of very protected sort of environment. I had a great school. I loved my schooling years. They made a big deal of me and my running. I think it was just a safe environment for me, and I was scared of change and really venturing out into the real world and kind of leaving home at 18. Back in the day wouldn't have seemed bad, but at the time for me, I just felt like I wasn't an adult. I wasn't grown up, and to then go live on my own, it was scary. And then that made me think, maybe I don't want to run. If running makes me have to leave home and be away from my family and be upset all the time, maybe that's not for me. And so then there was like that period of 6 months before college where I started to question whether I even wanted to run or not. And when I got to America and was still really unhappy for like the next 6 months, I was, looking at the team of girls, and there were a few girls on the team that I thought were like too thin, and that kind of scared me. I was like, this is not the environment I want to be in. This is a bit toxic. And it was a snowball of me being scared at the start and then turning everything into a negative, like even saying things like, oh, I don't want to make friends with Americans. I don't want to be in America.
Wow.
I don't want to live here. I want to live in Australia. It was just me kind of not really finding any positives in a situation and making my own environment toxic until I accepted that being there was the best thing for me. And then, overnight, I loved it and started running really well, and had such a great few years.
Well, you say overnight, but was there something that turned it around for you? Like, was it just
Um,
a flip of the switch?
yeah,
Good to
no,
go.
it wasn't. Yeah, it was not overnight. I think a few things happened. So if I got dropped off in August 2008 was when I started at college. That's when the year starts. I was running well, believe it or not. Like, I was really sad. I didn't have any friends, and I was, Skyping home a lot, but my running was very stable, and I was kind of finding peace in that running was the only thing bringing me a constant happiness. So training was good and racing was good. But come December, I came home again to see my family for Christmas, and that reset me. It kind of set me back again because I saw everyone, and I had to go to the airport again and say goodbye and cry and just, kind of like rip the Band-Aid off all over again. But then it was about 9 days after the new year, in 2009, my parents got a very blindsiding divorce. They separated, And for me at the time, and all us kids, it felt like it came out of nowhere. Obviously divorces don't come out of nowhere. There's plenty of context, but yeah, for me being so far away from home and hearing that my family home back in Brisbane was separating and the house was being sold and my mum and brothers were moving out and so on, I think I felt like I'd taken a step back, and here I am in America. I'm not helpful. I'm not useful. Like my mum's upset. I'm not, like, what am I doing here? That, resonated with me really badly for a while. And again, running was the only thing I could say at that time that was going well. I kept running well. I must have just kind of been channeling, stress and anxiety. And it wasn't until my mum came over to visit me just to reassure me that, she was fine, everyone was fine, everything's going to be okay, it's just going to be different. I'd say probably by the time May rolled around, once I felt like everything was okay at home and there was nothing I could do by being there, I just thought, I need to embrace that what I have here is special, and I'm a good runner and I have an opportunity here. And I'd say from May to June, my running took a leap. And I made nationals as a freshman, which was a big deal at the time in the 5,000 meters. And I think that is just it was just like an answer for me. It's, when all else fails and you feel like your sky's falling in, you'll always have running if you want it. And I thought running is what I love. It's what I do. And that'll be the thing that I keep constant when things aren't going well. And I just thought I'll stick it out and see how I go for another year. And I just kept loving it. I stopped coming home for summer. Like summertime would roll around and mum's like, when are you coming home? And I was like, oh, I'm going to stay here. So my family used to just come and visit me after a while. And it's crazy how it's just all mindset. Nothing became more comfortable in Florida. It's not like people started being nicer to me or anything changed externally. It was just, I think mentally I'd put a wall up. And once I accepted that, you can't control things out of your control, I just, really turned that switch and started to progress all areas of life, school, running, happiness, just everything.
Yeah, amazing. And speaking of control, when the little one does come along, I know you like to have a plan and some structure. Do you sort of look ahead and go, I'll make sure I save time for this and this here and there? Like, are you sort of able to plan at the moment what life could look like with baby?
Yeah, I've tried to. I think the thing where it first all starts is trying to make like a birth plan, something that Ryan and I haven't really sat down and given a whole lot of time, which we should soon because I'm in birthing territory in the next week. But I think that's what I'll probably find the hardest is letting go of the reins a little bit and being on his schedule. Babies don't choose when to have restless nights and be difficult if they're unhappy. So what I've tried to do is just have a rough idea of what I want to achieve in, say, my career in the next year, and how I think that's going to look. And then when the baby comes, it'll just be about trying to find some sort of routine. So we've gone and done little things like we've set up a home gym. We have a treadmill, we have an elliptical and a bike, because reality is, I can't go off to the gym like I did this morning for 3 hours. That doesn't happen anymore. So we've tried to set up things so that home is home base. It's the office. We set up our online business so that Ryan is always here working. I can be in the office when he's nursing the baby. It's just all going to be structured around us always being home. And it's a big reason why we moved back to Queensland. That's where my family is, and my mum lives around the corner. So she's, more than willing to be very hands-on and helpful. But like you said, the hardest part will be I can't have my, Monday to Friday, very strict routine that keeps me in order. It's going to have to be a little loose, and it's around the baby's schedule. But again, I think people forget how flexible and adaptive athletes are. I mean, we spend our career having to change plans, and expect the unexpected. So I do think that I'll take it in my stride, and it won't be as scary as some people make it out to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And gosh, talk about unexpected with the whole COVID and Olympic postponement, which we'll get to in a moment. But
Yeah.
I really wanted to, touch on your thoughts around, elite athletes and female athletes, obviously in particular, and those wanting to start a family and, what that conversation looks like. Because yes, all women are in the same position where, we are putting our lives and work on hold, but, your work is your body. And
Mm-hmm.
so there really is like, you know, that income could be put on hold with sponsorships and whatnot. So, what's that conversation where, you want to start a family and like timing and sponsorship deals, and what does all of that sound like?
Yeah, it's a really hard one, because I would say in sport we're the furthest behind, especially athletics, behind any other field, any other profession when it comes to paid maternity leave, because it really, up until a few years ago, it actually didn't exist with any brand, running brand that is. And it wasn't until people like Alison Felix in America fell pregnant as a, multiple medal winner at the Olympics, and she was sponsored by Nike at the time, and she was hiding her pregnancy for a really long period of time and still trying to rock up to training and stuff, just to delay the reality that when they find out, she's going to, be reduced or lose her mainstream of income. And so a lot's happened since then. A lot of brands have come in and said, we're happy to add paid maternity leave into a running contract, which is, never been done before. But really, it would only be a handful. Like I've obviously sat down with my sponsor Puma and said, I'm pregnant and I'm having a baby. My next year is going to look like X, Y, Z. But I don't have in my contract any protection of what happens with my performance bonuses. I am meant to be at the World Championships this year. I am meant to be at Commonwealth Games this year. Otherwise, which is very normal on contracts, you get reduced because you're not hitting essentially your quota. So that, that's still a conversation that needs to be had in my situation. But I think also where it's important for me to be vocal about stuff like this is, I just had a conversation yesterday with Athletics Australia, and there are government funding. So if you're a tiered athlete, you get a certain amount of funding a year. And again, you have performance goals that you have to hit to show that you deserve that funding. And just this year, Athletics Australia have put in a pregnancy clause, which means for me, whatever level I'm on now, as soon as I announce pregnancy, they put me on to my same level, but it's kind of / pregnancy clause. And it just means for the next year, they can't review me, and they don't sit down at the end of the year and be like, so how are you going now after birth? Are you on your way back? Like, are you trying to get back in shape? They give me a year at least to, have a baby, find a new routine, work out. Am I ready to start back? Was there any complications? What sort of help do I need? And we're still figuring it out. And that's something that I'm sitting down with other athletes in a similar situation and people in Athletics Australia. And we're kind of working out, okay, what do pregnant women need? With returning to play, do they need information? Do they need help? Do they need a woman's physio? And we're still eyeing out the kinks and working out how this will look and what this level of funding looks like. But it's a big step. It's such a big step in athletics, because before even my phone call yesterday, it didn't exist. There was no support for a woman that was a funded athlete and then fell pregnant. And that's so scary, because like you said, athletes are putting off having a family for exactly that reason. It's an awkward one. Even when I fell pregnant this time, I didn't tell anyone for quite some time, because I wanted to work out how I told my sponsors. It's scary thinking, will they walk away? And I've already sat down with my protein sponsor, True Protein, and they've just agreed to take me on for a whole nother year, which, my next year is going to be the most weirdest but exciting year yet. And to have support like that, it means the world, because it means, yes, we know you're pregnant, but we also believe in the athlete you are and the mum that you're going to be. And we think together that's going to be, you know, a great journey to follow and support. So it's never comfortable for women. And I think I know the AFL, women's AFL is adding in a lot of maternity clauses and stuff to help players that want to start a family, because it's a bit of a vicious cycle. We're putting off having families till, you know, later in life. And then some women are having trouble falling pregnant because they're older. And then you get stressed because you're like, I've given up my career and now I'm struggling to have a family. And it's a terrible place for a female to be at any point of time. And yeah, I just hope that over the next, you know, few years, this can continue to get better. And like, it's unheard of that you sign a contract without a maternity clause. That just shouldn't probably happen ever. And there's still a long way to go, just from me experiencing it firsthand. And I don't want women, you know, in my footsteps to have the same problem, because even me, who I think is, you know, vocal and speaks about things, I remember falling pregnant and thinking, oh, this is an awkward one. I don't know what to do. So I've learned from a lot of strong women around me, and I'm slowly taking, you know, all the right steps to help make change. But again, I think there needs to be a lot more of it and a lot more talk about it to help women in sport not be scared of starting a family.
Exactly. And I mean, this is the beginning. It's so fantastic to hear, and congratulations to Athletics Australia, who are, you know, trying to be progressive and change the narrative of, you know, women in sport. And, you know, you're so much more than just an athlete who gets out and runs. Like there's so much more to you, and there's so much more that we can learn, you know, from athletes going through, you know, your specific journey as well. And gosh, I think brands could, you know, you could still capitalize on that.
Yeah, so much. And now that I'm in the situation, obviously it took getting pregnant to really think about it, but I'm so intrigued to know how other mothers from a sporting background are going, or what they experienced, or what their story was like, you know, what their birth situation was like. I want to know so much about it. There is an audience. It's just
Exactly.
it's a different audience than maybe the one that was following me up until the Olympics, but it's a whole nother target audience that you know, you can definitely capitalize on. I mean, also my body right now is the complete antithesis of what it was at the Olympics, you know, and it's going to be exciting for me, and hopefully as I share the journey, what it's going to look like to get back into Olympic shape, because, you know, that's where my head's at and that's where I want to go, and I'm going to put everything into getting there, but it's going to be different. It's not going to be, you know, anything I've done before, but I just think brands could definitely ride that wave and support athletes on the same sort of journey. It's so
Absolutely. Intriguing. Yeah. And I want to watch your journey and your comeback. Like it's and you know, even if women decide they don't want to, that's okay as well. But yeah, it's definitely a journey that, you know, we still want to see.
Yeah, I always say that too. I'm like, look, I've had 2 Achilles surgery and I'm pregnant. It may not work. It could be a disaster, but I'm going to show me trying to do it. And yeah, if I get there, what a story. And if I don't, I won't sit up at night regretting that I didn't give myself every chance to accomplish more in my field.
Exactly. Amazing. Well, let's talk about Tokyo. Firstly, COVID and the postponement. What did that mean in terms of you? Because obviously you train to peak for the Olympics, and that then you're told it's not happening. How do you go with, you know, another year of training? Do you sort of back off then and there and then go, well, yeah, we need to start here? Like how did that look?
Yeah, it was different for all athletes, and like you said, it's a hard one because we don't just target year to year. I mean, right at the end of Rio and in 2016, when you know that the next Olympics is 4 years away, that's when your goal setting starts, and that's when your planning starts. And obviously a lot of plans change and we're used to that. But this one was a big one because it was so close. Like we were within the year, which is crazy because a year in the athletic world or the sporting world, it actually isn't that much. You know, our season is completely catered around different parts of the year, and whether it's base training, competition training, you know. So when we got the news, I think it was March, we were a week out from our Olympic trials, which is much earlier than the rest of the year. But for Australians, the Olympic trials are very important because early on you can solidify your place or at least have one foot in the door. And for me, it was actually the first time I was ready to run the trials or nationals since 2016. Like I just had years of injury just riddled throughout my season. And I felt like I was finally in this like crazy shape and in a position to run really well at my trials and continue on to Tokyo in 2020. So initially finding that news, a lot of us were pretty devastated in the sense that it wasn't cancelled. So that would have been scary if they said we're cancelling the Olympics. A postponement was still much easier to wrap your head around, but a year is a long time in the sense that peaking your body to be healthy and in its best shape is so hard at the best of times. And for me, who's someone that it feels like I'm constantly injured, I'd finally kind of strung together over a year of health. And I felt like that year was my year. And when they said one more year wait, I kind of thought, how am I going to not get injured in another year's time? Like that's a real balancing act. So I took the route of let's pull things back. I sat down with my coach, and I already naturally do a lot of cross training to take the weight bearing off my body, like my tendons and my joints. And he kind of said, don't do as much cross training, tone it back a little bit, keep the intensity at a sustainable level where you're not going to get burnt out. So week in and week out, you feel like you could do it forever without any idea of when your next competition is, and just see how you go. And even then, about a month in, I hit a wall. I called my coach and I was trying to just do a really simple session, but I had Ryan on the bike even, and I just trained terribly. And I knew it wasn't a physical thing. I think it was definitely a burnt out mental aspect that was struggling to think, how am I holding this until another year's time? And so we ended up kind of agreeing to just take a step back again. And really, like, I ended up going home to Queensland for the first time since 2008 and spending 12 weeks straight, just, you know, spending time with family, having dinners a lot, sleeping in a lot, doing still training, but almost like guilt-free training. I probably put on a little bit of weight on purpose just to like rejuvenate myself, and just enjoy the year for what it was. It was a time where everyone was locked down. It was more time with family and friends and kind of appreciating the small things that you wouldn't normally do in your day-to-day. And I think that saved me. I know we all know the end result of my Olympic campaign, but really I ended up picking things back up towards the end of 2020, more motivated than ever, when I knew that the exact new date of the Olympics. By December, January, I was running as good as ever. I was winning a lot of road races, and the start of 2021 definitely proved that it was about to be my best year yet. But then there's so many stories of other athletes that in 2020 kept that fire in their belly. They trained really hard. They actually had an amazing season and then fell short. Kind of the thing I was scared of, you know, their body broke down, or they probably just held that intensity for too long. And there was just such a mixed bag of it was actually a really strange Olympics, because you had some people benefiting from this amazing lead up of 2 years where it's just like they got better and better. But then you had some superstars that are always around, you know, fall short and not make it there. So, and then you had some young kids that probably weren't even expecting to be at 2020 Olympics. And then hang on, they've all of a sudden got this extra year and they've come on, and you've got this whole new batch of athletes. So Tokyo was a mixed bag, and it really just depended on how you dealt with that extra year. And for me, despite the outcome, I benefited from it. I got another year of training. There was also kind of like a refreshing phase that I got where I rejuvenated and felt stronger than ever. And by 2021, arguably, it was my best season yet. I mean, I ran some amazing events and got into shape that I know I've never been in before. And yeah, I just unfortunately didn't get to show that on the world stage.
I think it's a really important point that you make where you said that, you burnt out, but it was a mental fatigue. We're so used to hearing about, burning out physically, but mentally that can happen as well.
Yeah. And I knew it was mentally, like, I'm not someone that ever, kind of like my husband said, I have a lot of energy. So I'm always, and I enjoy running so much. Like, that's why I always get scared that I'll never be able to retire, because I love training. I love racing. I love traveling. I love doing all of that comes with running. And so it was a strange place for me in 2020 because something wasn't right for me. And I knew that I wasn't training too hard because we'd already, toned it back a little bit. So I was like, okay, it's not physical. I'm eating plenty. So it's not like I'm fatigued from, low energy. It was purely mental because I felt great in all other aspects of my life. But when I went out to do my session and really kind of get that 100%, squeeze that 100% out of your body that I'm used to doing because I'm so motivated, it wasn't there. And it really gets you down because you question your weakness, like, am I just being weak and I can't wrap my head around a year's weight like everyone else? But it just was, you forget how much energy you put into the mental side of things. And as an athlete, the mental side is almost more important than the physical side. And I think I just got to a point where I put so much on the 2020 Olympics and hearing that it was a year away, I had to accept that I had to take a step back. I had to be, kind to myself because mentally I wasn't going to be able to maintain that year of work and then enter another Olympic year. It was kind of like a fork in the road moment where for the first time I said to myself, let's call it for a while and just, play it as it goes and see as we get to the end of 2020 if we can wind it back up and go again.
Well, let's talk about that race. I'd love to know, like, what was your mindset going into it? And then, during the race, because the steeplechase it can be brutal.
Yeah, so
So, whilst you're, in the middle of it all, what's your, I guess, strategy behind it as well? Keeping in the back of the pack, staying away from people. Like, how does it work? And then leading up to that final set, what was
yeah.
it all like for you?
I mean, I'm well aware of how difficult the steeple is and how brutal it can be because essentially that's why I love it. It is a crazy event and I've had my fair share of injuries from it. So in that sense, it scares me a little and always has, but I also know the only way to run it is aggressively. And, you do have to run at those barriers and that water jump without any hesitation. And I've always known that anytime that I had a really big fall in 2013 where I broke my ankle and it took me a year just mentally to be like, I'm ready to run at it again, and run at it and jump off it and land without, flinching or landing double foot or just trying to protect my body. So really in 2021, when I said that I was kind of got to the best shape I ever been in, I was racing the steeple really well. And I think for the first time in years, I was just confident in whatever my race plan was. And it was always different. Like at nationals, I knew I was the strongest athlete in the field because it was a very young field. And I just essentially went to the front and led from go to woe. And it was just like, that was my comfort. I could see the barriers, I could sight them, I could, run at the water jump aggressively and run out. And, that was a great race for me. But then going over to Europe and racing in these big diamond leagues where I'm again racing girls that will be at the Olympics, I changed tactics. And it's like, hug the rail, but stay out of trouble, don't get too close to a big pack and just focus on finishing strong. And I did one of those in Stockholm a month out from the Olympics. And then 3 days later, I went down and ran in Monaco. and again ran my second fastest steeple ever. I actually nearly got my Australian record, but there was a poor girl ran straight into a barrier right in front of me, and I had to hurdle her and the barrier at the same time. And it zaps your energy, because you have a spike in your heart rate where you're like, oh my gosh, am I okay? Am I okay? And like, is she okay?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, what just happened? Like, everything happens in like a blink of an eye. And then even as I'm running around, every time I get to that spot again, I'm seeing like medical people attend to her. And there's just, you know, it's hard to stay calm in those situations, which, you know, affect your race. So coming out of that race, I remember thinking, if I just did that time in that type of situation where there was all that mess, you know, I'm ready to go. Tokyo is definitely where I'll run my best race yet. But for me, the next month started to slowly unravel. And the thing that I'm impressed about myself as an athlete, and all athletes will probably say, yeah, I would have done the same, is you're so focused on the Olympic Games. You know, it is the biggest thing that has come around in the last 4 to 5 years for any athlete going. Even though things were unraveling for me in that month leading up, because my Achilles started to get sore and training had to kind of be manipulated around how my body was going. You know, there was a week after that last Monaco race where I just said to myself, no, I'm staying in the pool this whole week. I'm just pool running, and I'll keep my fitness up. If anything, I'll increase my fitness, but I'm not running on the track. I'm letting my foot, you know, just have a bit of a rest. And it didn't really upset me. I didn't feel like I was derailed. I didn't think that was, you know, a negative preparation. It was just different. And that's how I was convincing myself, like, this happens. Sometimes you have to alter the plan, but that's okay because I'm in such good shape. And looking back, like, that's never a good sign. If your foot's so sore, you can't run on it for a week. Leading into the Olympic Games, you would start to think that bets are off. You know, I don't know how this is going to go, but I was so committed and determined to run well that by the time I got to the Olympic Village, you know, I saw all the medical team I needed to see, because before that we were at a training camp. It was kind of hard to get medical attention. And the whole team worked with me tirelessly, trying to make sure that my body was in the best possible place. But for me and my husband, who I was talking to every day, all we cared about was how I was mentally. Was I still confident? Did I still think I could run well? Did I still believe in my fitness? And I kept that as sharp as ever. Like, I look back now and I think, did you doubt yourself? Really think now, remove everything in hindsight. Were you scared of how you're going to go? And no, I was naive and oblivious to the hiccup that I was facing. And I think that's so important. You can sometimes like fake it till you make it, because so much is mindset and confidence. And I mean, that's the reason why I made the final. Looking back at that first round that I ran, it was in 36-degree heat at 10 a.m. in the morning in Tokyo with 100% humidity. And I mean, I only just got through. I got in on time, which is an alarm in itself, because I knew I was better than that. But I was so excited. I was like, yes, I made it through the final. It's so exciting. My husband was excited, but I think it was because deep down we thought you were literally running on one leg. Like, I look at the video and I'm like, oh, I'm just like compensating so much. But I was just so determined and so focused that you go into that race, don't do anything silly, don't try lead, don't try be a hero. You qualify. That's it. You know, no one wins medals in the first round. And I did just that. It was just I had 2 days off then until the final, and those 2 days, again, I ended up just saying, I'm not going to run. That you would never do that. 2 days before your final, you probably do a bit of a shakeout. You might even hop on the track and like run a few fast strides just to make sure your body is not lethargic and doesn't carry through any muscle soreness. But I just like sat down with the medical team and we said, let's just get your foot settled as much as possible. We can discuss cortisone. We can discuss numbing the heel so you don't feel it. And in the end, I said no to everything. I said, no, I think I'm going to be fine. Like, I just qualified. What's a bit of pain? It's 9 minutes of running. I'll be fine. And I convinced myself I was fine. And again, like, it's for listeners, they're probably like, well, you're just crazy. You're kind of like blacking out reality. But it's just your mentality as an athlete. You don't have a choice in certain situations, and that's your coping mechanism. And for me, my coping mechanism was, this is the Olympic Games. I've worked 5 years to be here, and I'm not going to let anything destroy that. And I'm going to put my best foot forward, and hopefully it's enough. And, you know, I ended up making it all the way to the last barrier, which is just crazy because it could have, my Achilles could have ruptured at any point, and it literally waited until the last barrier, which it's almost comical. But it's fitting in the sense that when I can look back months later and, you know, I've dealt with the pain and the hurt of it all coming down to a DNF in an Olympic final and a ruptured Achilles, I was running on borrowed time for a really, really long time. And it was my mindset that enabled me to go that far. And I think that a lot of athletes not wired the same, maybe wouldn't have even made it to the start line, who knows? And so you've got to kind of use those bits of information to make you like proud and feel tough rather than feel weak and a disappointment or a failure. Otherwise you won't sleep at night in this field. And, you know, sitting back, obviously, you know, I'll be the first to say I was gutted for a long time. Ryan tells everyone that I dealt with it very quickly, but I dealt with it quickly in the practical sense. It was like, okay, Achilles is ruptured. What's the next step? Surgery, move on, fall pregnant. Like, yes, of course. There's a part of the story where I was just a robot, but mentally, no. Like mentally, I had, you know, plenty of downtime to sit there and think, where did I go wrong? What were the errors? How could have I made this different? You know, this is heartbreaking. This is not how I wanted my career to end, or this is not how my 2021 was meant to pan out. And I didn't even show everyone what I was capable of. But again, I can now look at it from such a different angle months down the track and say, you know, there is some crazy positives in there that show my character and, you know, why I've even made it this far. I think the journey that I've had created me and the human I am for 2021 to be able to deal with it. And yeah, that's why I think that's the main reason why I don't want to finish. I don't want to end my career on a DNF at the Olympic Games. I want to, even if I never reach this caliber again, I still think you can't end like that. Not after
Absolutely.
everything I've learned.
Yeah, you want to end on your terms.
Exactly.
Can you tell that there's something not right?
Yeah. Yes, but you're not accepting it. But if I'm honest with myself, when you're running so unevenly, so because it's actually my left Achilles that was, you know, playing up, and I've had a bad left Achilles since Rio, but what happened in those last two races a month out from the Olympics is it just essentially was the straw that broke the camel's back. There was just one too many races and just not enough recovery time, and it flared up. And whenever my Achilles flares up like that, in any other situation, I would take some time to get it right, wouldn't race for a while, definitely wouldn't put spikes on. But with the Olympic Games only a month away, I didn't really have that time I needed. So for that whole month, I was running essentially on one leg. So my right leg was kind of carrying my body. And when you're doing that as a runner that has been running their whole life and is very efficient, you know immediately. So your body will start responding, you know, it'll tighten up on one side, or, you know, my quad on my right side would kind of in the middle of a rep get really sore. And it was just because it's taking every step, it's taking 70% of your body weight instead of 50. And so in that final, I remember in the call room, you know, they're telling you, oh, we'll take you out on the track in 3 minutes. I kept retying my shoe like it wasn't fitting properly, but it was more just like this OCD reaction where I just knew it wasn't right. And I was taking the shoe on and off, retying it up, like probably making all the girls around me anxious because it's like, we're about to walk out on stage and you're still tying
Get your shoes on.
Yeah, can you sort your shit out? That I knew like it just wasn't right. And I was just kind of getting agitated with it and frustrated. And when you know you're about to go run a 3K steeple, you need your foot to be comfortable. And looking back, it wasn't that it wasn't comfortable. It just that the whole balance was off in my body. And I went and did a stride right before the gun went. They let you do 1 or 2 strides just to, you know, pour a bit of water on yourself and get your muscles moving because they've had you in like a pen for a few minutes. My stride was off. Like it just didn't feel, I can't even say I was in pain. Like I'd blocked all that out. I just wasn't fluent. And it wasn't like this flowy stride where I'm like, yes, I'm ready to go. And in the race, timing was off. Every time I ran into a barrier, I wasn't gliding over it. We practice hurdles all the time, but in this situation, I was stuttering every single hurdle. So in the race, you try not to let those things affect you, because it's all about keeping your heart rate low and not allowing it to spike with anything that happens around you. It's almost like zoning out. But when you're constantly like stuttering and hurdling every 80 meters, like that was annoying me. I was like, what are you doing? Like, you've practiced this so many times, stop stuffing up. And I think it was just all my body kind of just not being itself and not really finding a rhythm, which was saying to me, something's off. It's not you just not trying, you know what, you're focused, you're ready. It's your body crying out saying, neurally, I'm all off and I'm struggling to find that rhythm. So there were all little signs that when you put them together, it's like, duh, no wonder your Achilles. But you try to ignore all the warning signs.
Yeah, it's so incredible to be so in tune with your body to know that something's not right. But when there's a job to be done, you just go out and do it, right?
Yeah.
During this entire process, like what have you learned in terms of, getting through this massive injury? And, you've been here before. So is there something that makes this different? Do you tackle it differently? Like, what have you learnt about yourself going through all of this?
I think I have had constant lessons throughout my career that have enabled me to even be able to deal with this definitely being my biggest challenge. And it's always been the same mentality, but it's like I've kind of perfected it each upset and each bit of adversity I get. I tinker with it a little bit and work out a new thing that helps me deal with such upset. And it's just all the mentality that you have after adversity, because no one needs a strong positive mindset when things are going well, because it becomes second nature and you just do what you got to do. When I'm running well and I'm fit, that's when everything's the easiest. It doesn't matter if I'm training hard, it's just easy and it comes to me. But with injuries along my career right up until Tokyo, it was all about how I came out of that. And I always allow grieving time. I think for most people, it's so important. You have to grieve. You have to accept that what happened is unfortunate and it's sad, and you can't try be a robot. And that's why I do try say I grieve, as much as it might not show on social media, or I seem to flick a switch and I'm already rehabbing and doing stuff. There is always a grieving period where I let myself be sad and I cry, and I mainly direct it all at Ryan, who's in the line of fire, but in a way that's healthy. I think you can also then dwell, and that's where people get stuck. In this is in anything, not just sport. I've spoken to a few companies in the corporate world, and it's like, if you miss an opportunity or something bad happens, grieve it and accept it, but don't fall into that hole where you're kind of just forever a victim of something terrible and you can't get out of it, because you will get lost and stuck in there, and it's really, really hard to get out of it the longer you sit in that kind of dark place. So for me, it's once I feel like I've had enough time to accept what happened and do all the things where you sit there and think of all the different ways where you could have changed the outcome, I then try to work on a plan forward. So whether it's a new goal or just baby steps to what's next. So for me in that situation, one was starting a family. Without even considering my running career, I just thought, I've always wanted a family. I've always wanted to be a mother. I'm going to be out for a long time right now. I've got a double Achilles surgery ahead of me. This is a perfect time to start a family. That was a huge part for me, because it was almost like I was accomplishing something in the midst of failing from something else. And I know not everyone can go and do something so major in their life while they're in a dark place, but for me, that was a big one. But then the second thing was, do I want to still be a runner? And if I do, what do I need to do? And once I knew that I still wanted to run and be competitive and aim for another Olympics, it's, what steps do I need to take to get there? And for me, it was surgery, then rehab. And I mean, that's all a whole nother few months planned for me, and I don't look past that. I don't try to look at a year from now. I look at what does my next month or two look like? What do I want to have done by December, by Christmas? And it allows you to just take that next step forward, wake up in the morning without that weight on your chest where you feel so anxious because you're lost and you don't know how to move forward. And I think that's just important in any sort of adversity. You need to find out how you're going to move forward from this and what the next goal is if this one failed. And I'd say the other thing is, it's healthy to think of how you could have changed it. Like I said, I spent months thinking of every little decision I made leading up to rupturing my Achilles, and could have I made the outcome any different by doing something different and trying to learn from that. But it's also, it's life, and hindsight is amazing, but it's not always useful. And just know that whenever you're making decisions, if you can confidently think, at that time, I thought that was the smartest thing to do, even though it wasn't, but at the time I thought it was, you can't then regret it. You can't go back on it and relive it over and over again. It's just not useful whatsoever. And my husband says I did that really well, because when he makes errors or gets injured or makes a silly decision in a race that costs him a, really great, like a medal or something, he says he struggles, he can't sleep at night, and he thinks about it over and over and over again, like, why did I do that? Why did I do that? But at the end of the day, at the time, you made the decision because you thought it was the right one. You didn't purposely go, I'm going to make this decision so that I don't win a medal. And I think that's where we need to be much easier on ourselves. As tough as we may be and want to be, and as much as we want to accomplish things, you need to know that in the moment, you're always trying to be the best you can be. And having regret is not helpful, and it doesn't fix or change anything that's happened.
That is such an incredible and powerful message, and relatable to anyone and everyone in whatever thing that you're doing, career-wise or, life in general. It's very well said. You are you are an incredible person. You're an incredible athlete. And this is a really exciting time for you now, obviously going into motherhood. Mm-hmm. Not going to be running as much, but you said you've got your online business now, Gregson Running. Tell us about that and how you are incorporating that into your life and coaching others.
Yeah. So essentially we decided on Gregson Running because of COVID. COVID was scary because, we kept hearing through just, people in Europe and all our other running friends and managers and stuff, that the running world was going to change and contracts were going to be cut, because obviously when shoes don't sell and there's a global pandemic, the first thing they've got to cut is who they pay to market things. And it was a scary time for all professional athletes, not knowing what the future held. A lot of contracts end at the end of an Olympic cycle, and 2020 was technically the end of an Olympic cycle. So contracts were being, cut and not continued, even though we didn't have an Olympics to prove that we were worth another cycle. And when we kind of had that sort of financial stress looming over us, my husband and I just thought, look, we are getting older. We won't be runners forever. We need a way to kind of transfer like our passion and love for running while we're doing it into something that can be profitable and help us continue while we want to be runners, can help us continue running, and then also be useful when we're not runners anymore, and we can, use our knowledge somewhere else. And so we kind of started formulating a business plan all through the COVID year of what we wanted it to look like. And we weren't people that wanted to necessarily coach superstars, because that's a lot of pressure. I mean, when you get a talented kid, there's a lot of pressure on you to make sure that, he or she turns into the next superstar. And, we weren't ready to necessarily start this whole professional sort of running group. We were more targeting the amount of messages we both get through social media of people that genuinely just want to run a faster 5K or want to ask us, how do you stay motivated when you're kind of in a rut with your running, or how do you get out the door? What makes you want to run? And there was just so many constant messages of people just from the recreational world, or just, you know, your average Joe blog that wanted to have a better 10K time. And I just thought there's more of a market with these people. And I think we have a lot to offer because, like you said, our mindset is something that I think has carried us through our career and given us longevity. So we ended up creating an online running coaching program, but it's also very individualized. So it's meant to be catered to the person that has a 9 to 5 or has a big family and they struggle to find time for themselves, or, you know, they can't buy a training plan online because, you know, what happens if they go on a family holiday in the middle of it, or what if one of their children gets sick and they can't run for a few days because they're, you know, looking after their child. It's for the busy life of a normal person, and all reality is running is hard and they need someone to talk them through it day to day. So we create individualized programs catered specifically to what they want. So the level they're at and where they want to get, even if it is just lifestyle, if they just, I want to run every day because I want to be healthy. And then we set them up on a training program and WhatsApp so that we can communicate. And yeah, it's almost like a little bit of mentoring as well, like the amount of athletes we talk to day to day, just because they want someone to listen to what they did, or like, hey, I'm having a really hard day today and I know you've scheduled some reps, but there's just no way I'm going to be able to do it mentally and physically. And it's as simple as us just rescheduling their week and moving things around and just making it a little more doable for them. And yeah, we've had some great results, and it's actually surprising. Ryan and I have just really got into following, you know, little race results that they have on the weekend, because when they PB or do something well, it's like, wow, that's us, like
yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And I know like some people will think, oh no, it's probably slow compared to what you're doing. I'm like, no, because we're runners, we're really good at understanding what is good at a certain level. Like we're giving them rep time, so that usually can kind of correlate to what their race time should be, and then they might do something way faster than we expected, and it's really exciting. So we've thoroughly enjoyed it. I know Ryan loves it, and it's allowed us to take it wherever we are. You know, we were just in Noosa for a week, but we sit and do our Gregson running every day to make sure that athletes that we have from all over the world feel like they constantly have someone to speak to and can read off their training rep times and stuff like that. So it's been something we're really glad we started, and we're still growing it and still adding to it. You know, we have added training plans. We do want to do kids clinics more locally, but this was a really good start for us, and we're just really grateful to be able to have clients to share the journey with.
Absolutely. And they would love it, like having that direct contact with you as well. It's not just some screen or through email or even someone else as another coach. It's literally they're talking with you.
Yeah, it's really fun. And yeah, like I said, all our clients are just, oh, they're just great people, because they obviously follow us and love what we do as well. So it's kind of like a two-way thing. Like we love seeing them improve, and they love, you know, also being on our journey, you know.
Yeah, super fantastic. So tell us about your future plans. Are you making a comeback in steeplechase, or is it something else?
I mean, I love the steeplechase. I'm sad to say that I'll never do it again. So I probably can't confidently say I will never steeplechase again. But the thought of my two tendons, or my two Achilles tendons having to land in that water pit again, may not be a realistic thing to do, just especially if I'm trying to continue running. It'd be different if I wanted one more year, one more shot at breaking my Australian record or making a team or whatever, then yeah, I'd do the steeplechase. But for longevity reasons, and because I'm so passionate about running for a lot longer, I'm going to steer all my attention to the roads. I think that road running definitely is somewhere where I belong. I've always really performed well in like anywhere from even a mile on the road up to 10K, but I'm a very economical runner. My husband says I shuffle and I have no knee drive or butt kick. I just essentially glide along the ground without lifting my feet up. And it's true. It's just kind of, I think it's years of injury, and I just kind of avoid getting too far off the ground for like impact reasons. So my aim is by the end of this year to be doing some sort of road racing. And I mean, I'll be the first to admit I won't be probably breaking any records or winning anything, but just to be out there again and find my feet. But I really do want to go to the Paris Olympics and make my 4th Olympic Games. And I think the marathon is definitely something I've always thought about. My husband and I have thought about it for years, and this just feels like a door has opened because, you know, my body is saying the track is very intense and it's hard on your muscles and tendons. Let's give something else a go while you're still reasonably young. So yeah, hopefully I have enough time to pull myself together and be ready for 2024. But I never say that I won't return to the track. You know, I love the 5K. I love the 10K. I love track running. It's just the steeple was adding a few other, well, figuratively speaking, they were adding a lot of barriers for me to make a healthy return. And I think I'm ready to do that long build up of being a marathon runner. And they say that all our marathon runners in Australia, a lot of them are mothers. So there is a thing of mum strength, and I'm hoping to channel that over the next few years.
Absolutely. Oh, well, so excited to watch your journey unfold. If people want to find out more about you and your journey and follow along and even find out more about your online coaching, how can they do that?
So I'm really good on social media, Instagram. So my
You
handle,
are. I love seeing all the things that you're doing.
I document quite a lot. So if you're interested in following just me trying to be a mum and return to the athletic world, it'll be interesting to say the least. My handle's Jen__ Lacars, which is my maiden last name. And yeah, for Gregson Running, that's also in my bio, but gregsonrunning.com.au is our website where it's all pretty much explained what we do and what we offer. But yeah, if you want to know more, you can just send an email into the contact form and we'll get straight back to you. I'm very good at emails. They come to your phone. I feel like it's a text message these days. But, yeah, we have it all documented, and both Ryan and I would love to chat and share our journey.
Genevieve, this has been so sensational. Thank you so much for your time. To end this interview, I love to get one tip from my guests for people to take on in their life or training or whatever it is. So for those out there who may be injured and feel like they're constantly battling something, there's a niggle, what's your message to them, and how can they manage, I guess, both the physical and the mental side of things?
I mean, kind of like what I said earlier, if I can give you any tips that I've used my whole career, it's, you know, a step process. It won't get better overnight, you know, which I learned back in college. And it's about kind of accepting where you are and not turning things into a negative. Like if you're in a bad place, it's really hard to get out of at the best of times. So I would say sit there, accept your situation, grieve if you have to, but set a new goal and start planning how to move forward, and go easy on yourself. I'd be the first to admit that there's been times where I've almost punished myself for being hurt and made training so hard, and it's like I cross-train like a crazy person. And then after a few weeks, I'm so exhausted and in a bad place mentally that, you know, I feel like I've actually taken steps backwards. Be kind to yourself, make a sustainable plan that you can see yourself doing indefinitely for a long time, and find the positives in your environment. I mean, I'll be the first to admit I'm good at having a pity party and finding out all the negatives and thinking that it's poor me and I'm the victim. But once you can kind of switch adversity into a new opportunity, it can open so many doors. And I'm real life experience on that. I mean, rupturing my Achilles, I could have told you at the time was the worst thing that could have ever happened. But looking back now, and where I've come and what I have planned, it was a door opening in my career. And you know, I'm blessed that I ruptured my Achilles on the last barrier.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy to think like that, isn't it? But when you do look back and try and be positive, it does open up your mind to other opportunities out there.
And adversity, it creates character. Like you
Yeah.
learn to deal with hard things. If things were easy all the time, like you're just never learning, and you're never really equipped with what you need to have when things get tough. And I do believe that whatever life throws at me, it's going to get hard, and there'll be plenty of more stories in my career from here where I think this is the worst thing that's happened, but I just know that I'll be able to move forward from it just from what I've learned so far. And adversity is only going to help you deal with what's ahead in life. So hopefully you're able to deal with it then and there, and make a plan and move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Genevieve, thank you so much. I cannot wait to watch your journey over the next few years. Good luck. And once again, thank you.
No, thank you for having me. I love chatting and storytelling, and it's again another way that I learn to, cope with what's happened and what's ahead.
That was the wonderful Genevieve Gregson with an open and honest recount of her career thus far. And what I loved about this conversation is the fact that Genevieve is an open book. In fact, leading up to this conversation, throughout our communication, she was just like, ask me anything. I'm an open book. And I really love that about her. She's so sweet and down to earth and really wants to inspire you through her journey as well. And you'll see that when you look at her Instagram, it is really an honest, open documentation of her life and the highs and lows, and it's just so awesome to watch and follow her journey. So head over and follow her on Instagram if you're not already. I have all the links in the show notes, and of course check out Gregson Running, whether you're a beginner wanting to run a 5k or run a PB, or if it's just about getting a program and having the support to back you up, check them out. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends, leave a review and subscribe, because it all helps keep this little podcast going strong. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. You are awesome. Have the best day, week, month and year, and here's to a world of bodies built better.